Local history. Local culture. Local events. Your community. This is the Joe Kelly Show.
And welcome to the show, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Our guest is Mike Bosak. Mike is a very active member of the Landmark Society of Greater Utica. We're going to be talking about some upcoming events. We'll, of course, talk about some area landmarks. But before we do any of that, we're going to say good to see you. Welcome back.
Good to be here, Joe. Thank you.
Before we get into those things that I just mentioned, Mike, just the other day you had a ceremony over at Rutger Park for some historical markers. Talk about that.
Yes. We received 2 markers from the Pomeroy Foundation, historical markers, one to commemorate the Rutgers-to-Bend Historic District, which Rutger Park is in, of course, and the other to commemorate number 3, Rutger Park, which is a National Historic Landmark, the Miller-Conkling-Kernan House.
A lot of people aren't familiar with the Pomeroy Foundation and what they've picked up the slack, so to speak, here.
Yes, the New York State Education Department used to provide the markers, the roadside markers, the blue and yellow ones that most people are familiar with. They stopped doing that in the 1930s. So Pomeroy saw a need, because people are naturally curious about these things, so they saw a need, and if you qualify, you're able to get a marker and all that. So as I think you know, you have to follow certain rules and regulations. It's not just that you can apply and just get it. But we managed to do that, and through one of our trustees, and we had the unveiling just last week.
Those markers are, I think, so valuable to New York State. In fact, at home I've got 2 books that cover all the markers in New York State and a little bit of history about them. Anyway, where are your markers located?
Well, one is on Rutgers Street, right in front of the stone wall, in front of what would have been the number 2 mansion, which is now gone, and the other one is right in front of the number 3 mansion.
Is that stone wall original?
Yes. It was built in 1820, along with the foundation for number 3. The building itself wasn't completed until 1830.
It all started with number 3.
Yes.
And it all started with Judge Miller, did it not?
Yes, Judge Morris Miller.
Yeah, yeah.
He unfortunately didn't live to see the building completed, but that was his dream basically, and it was completed by his son and his widow.
And back in those days, Mike, wasn't it a farm?
Basically a farm, yes. That was the edge of the city, farmland and the hinterlands, and you go up John Street, and that was basically the end of it was actually the village of Utica before it was a city.
Do I recall my history correctly that there was some criticism of the judge building something so far out?
At the time it was far out, and yes, he did receive criticism, just like Governor Clinton received a lot of criticism about the Erie Canal when it was originally proposed. So.
What kind of shape is number 3, and how would you describe the shape? I've been in recent days, I've been on the first floor. That looks pretty good.
Yes. Yes, the first floor is the best floor. Obviously, as you go up further, there's, centuries worth of deterioration and all that, but we're working little by little, slowly to fix it up.
And on the first floor, you have a beautiful dining room.
Yes, dining room is beautiful. We have Zubair wallpaper in there, which needs some work, but we have what they call a salon, which is actually the large room over on the west side of the building.
And a library, yes?
Yes.
That's where we shot our show, in the library. And we didn't have time that day. Maybe one of these days you'll invite me back. I'd love to see some of the titles of those books. It's a very big library.
Yes. No originals there, but yes, there's some old volumes.
Are you still doing weddings at number 3?
Occasionally, yes. We do have requests for that, showers, parties, birthday parties, and all that. So.
What about the second floor?
Second floor needs some work, but it's not in horrible condition. So we're looking eventually at having each room maybe dedicated to certain individuals or certain groups that would sponsor a room and fix that up with their name with a plaque on it.
Nice idea.
Sure.
What shape is the roof in, Mike?
Not bad, not bad. It will need some replacement down the line, but as of right now, it's watertight. So.
And originally, the backyard was, would they have fruit trees or something like that?
They had some pretty elaborate grounds during the in the day. They did have some very, very nice grounds. That'll be a ways away to recreate anything like that.
Structurally, the building's okay?
Yes, very, very solid.
That's amazing when you think of how old that building is, that it's still holding up.
Yes. Well, when you think about it, it's coming up on 200 years. So.
And the Munn building, which is 2 doors down, or the Munn Castle as it's called.
Yes.
That's not in as good a shape.
No, it needs a lot more work, and we're working on that right now. We're going to be having some roof work done shortly, hopefully, and much needed. And you know, little by little, it's incremental, but it takes time.
And for those who aren't familiar with the exact location of this, we're talking Rutgers Street, the corner of Howard Ave.
Yes. If you go straight up John Street, as far as you can go, number 3 mansion is right in front of you.
And there's you divert traffic now. There's a chain across that driveway.
Yes.
It used to be you could drive right in, right?
During a certain period of time, yes. You used to have a circular driveway, carriage house, and all that. So, yes.
Do I recall correctly? They used to have you make my memory go back to it. Reading about it. Horse races on Rutgers Street. Did you ever read about that?
I've heard about that, yes. A little before my time.
Yeah, mine too, I should quickly point out. And there are others, those are the 2 places that are owned by Landmarks Society, but there's other places in historic Rucker Park.
Yes, there are. Number 4, the former Squonket home right next to us on the east side. And then number 5 is privately owned and in very good condition. And number 7, which is the more modern building, which was purchased, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago and rehabbed.
That's, when I was growing up, that used to be the Teamsters building back there, right?
Yes.
The one in the back.
Actually, both of them were.
Okay.
The older one from the 1880s and also the newer one from the 1970s.
Okay. When we come back, we'll get to talking about some of the upcoming events that Landmark Society has got going for this summer, some interesting ones as well. Short break, right back. And welcome back, everybody. Thanks for sticking with us. Mike Bosak's our guest. Mike is very active at the Landmark Society of Greater Utica. We're talking about landmarks and all kinds of other things. When we say Landmark Society of Greater Utica, what are we talking about? Yorkville, New Hartford, Whitesboro?
It was deliberately left open because it's not just Utica. There are historic needs throughout, and so we called ourselves Greater Utica, and I think that that's a very appropriate name. I mean, it could go as far as Boonville, it could go to Rome and all, but primarily the focus would be Utica.
And it got started really because the city was losing some great buildings, yes?
Yes. I think the impetus was really the loss of City Hall, but it really congealed, it really came together with the threat to Union Station. And also the recent threat at that time of the Stanley Theater. So it was a function of the Junior League and became a full-blown entity with a charter and all that in 1974, so 50 years ago this year.
Hard to believe, particularly if you're a younger age, that at one time the Stanley Theater was threatened.
Yes, you couldn't imagine Utica without the Stanley or Union Station,
right.
But those were real threats, and they very nearly came down. So
I remember Union Station, it was in the headlines almost every day with the thought of it coming down.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And talk about a building that was structurally sound. I mean, that building was built for the ages, and it would have been such a shame to lose it. It was never fully occupied until the county took it over many, many years later. But again, it was the roof that was the culprit, and lack of maintenance, because the railroads didn't want to be in the passenger business at the time. And so ultimately the Oneida County took it over, have been outstanding stewards all along, and it is in terrific condition.
What's your thought, Mike, on Oneida County Executive Vicente's movement to get that REA wing occupied and used and active?
Well, I've always advocated for it. It's a very difficult building to reuse because of its configuration. It's very skinny and long, but I think that, you know, I've seen it done in other places where it could become more active as part of the regional market or small shops and all that. Again, Bag Square is a tourist destination, so something to that effect would work or could work. Small restaurants. Denver has a nice little brew pub right across the street from their Union Station in a former, you know, same type of building and all that. So there are possibilities.
It was kind of interesting the way that operated. I really don't remember the REA. I don't know when they went out of business, but the train would come into Utica, and then they would take the freight, bring it into one of those bays. There's many bays down there. And then the trucks would pull up on the other side of the building, and it was an upper level.
Yep.
I mean, that just was a very unique kind of a...
Yes, it is. It is. And you can still see that when you go to the regional market and all that. You can see where the differential in floor is.
Yeah. Let's talk about some of your upcoming things. You're nice enough to bring some of your schedule. You've got a very active summer, yes?
Yes, and we do. We have, again, for almost 30 years now, we've been putting on these walks, summer walks and talks. Used to be part of the Utica Monday Night when Lynn Michelini started that many years ago, but we're continuing on.
I missed that Utica Monday Night. I thought that was a great...
It really was.
Yeah.
It really was.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No problem. We are going to be doing an adaptive reuse actually this coming Monday. So we're going to look at a former church that's a recording studio now. That's the Big Blue North recording studio, 2317 Genesee Street on the corner of Beverly. And you know, especially in cities, a lot of the congregations are getting smaller, older. They're not able to maintain these huge edifices and all that, so it's very difficult to reuse a church. A church is a very purpose-built building, and they've done a very good job with doing this particular one, using it as a recording studio because the acoustics in there are very, very good. We'll also be looking at what's going on with the Uptown Theater, which is actually, that theater is older than the Stanley. And so they've been working very hard, UTCA.
So same night, you're going to go to the recording studio and...
Yes,
okay.
yes. It's one of our twofers, yes.
Okay.
So we will be looking at several other things this summer. Grace Episcopal Church is one of them. Everybody knows where Grace is, and that's a gorgeous, gorgeous edifice. One of the newer ones that we haven't done before, which is the Utica Center for Development Veterans Outreach Center, almost across the street, basically. That is going to be on July 22nd, and that one is in the former YMCA. And they've taken that over and done a very good job with it. And recently they've purchased the Westminster Presbyterian Church right next door and the surrounding area. They've got what were classrooms, I guess, at one time. So they've taken that over. The congregation's still able to worship there, which is very nice. They're going to make sure that that building is weather-tight and in good condition. So that's going to be a very good one. We're also going the following Monday on July 29th. We're going to the Vernon Center Historic District, and there's a small church there that was vacant for many years, and a young gentleman bought that and actually has been putting some money into that whole green in Vernon Center. He's bought several buildings. He's been working to rehab them and bring them back up to their former glory, which is a very nice thing to see.
Any others?
Sure. Every Monday now from now until the end of August, so 6 o'clock. And we're going to see, we like to do an industrial one every so often. So it's a 100th anniversary of Varflex Corporation. Again, you mentioned Greater Utica. We include Rome as well as part of Greater Utica. So Varflex is 100 years old this year. They just celebrated their birthday in May. And that is on West Court Street in Rome. So we like to look at an industrial one and see what goes on there. There's some pretty interesting things that go on there.
And then you've got that trip over to Munson toward the end of the summer.
Yes, the very last one is the Munson campus. So it's a lot more than just the art museum and Fountain Elms there. So they have quite a campus. We'll be given a tour. We won't get into too many of the buildings because they'll be closed, but we'll take a look at what they have and what they use them for.
Yeah.
New buildings, rehabbed older buildings.
And they're doing a lot of work over there.
Oh, a tremendous amount of work on the front of the Art Center and also Fountain Elms.
Yeah.
So.
Now, did you, during a commercial break, you were telling me that you think you might be going back to the Utica Armory?
Well, we were unfortunately unable to get inside. The active duty members were deployed and they weren't, they were held up basically. They couldn't get back, so there was no way to get into the building. So we're thinking about possibly next year having an inside tour, make sure we can get inside.
Yeah.
I know we had quite a crowd there. A lot of people did want to get inside, so we'll think about doing that next year.
All right. And also you have a trip coming up to Buffalo. When we come back from this break, we'll talk about that Buffalo trip, okay?
Very good.
Mike Bosak's our guest. We're talking landmarks. Short break. Right back. And welcome back, everybody. Thanks for sticking with us. Mike Bosak's our guest. Mike from Landmark Society of Greater Utica. In addition to your walk and talks throughout the summer, you're also going out to Buffalo. What's that all about?
Yes, July 20th, which is a Saturday, we are leaving from North Utica and going to Buffalo. As you may know, I went to school in Buffalo for architecture, and I've always been enamored with Frank Lloyd Wright. He's a world-renowned architect. He is no longer with us, unfortunately. He died in 1959, but his buildings, many of them go back to the turn of the last century, and they look modern even by today's standards. The prairie style, very long and linear, but he's got quite a few buildings that he designed that are in Buffalo. We're going to see the Martin House complex, very interesting complex of about 5 or 6 buildings. The Martin House itself is the main building. It's a beautiful structure. And there's another ancillary building that was built for Darwin Martin's sister, the Barton House, but some of that complex was actually torn down. In the 50s, they tore the conservatory down, the pergola, carriage house, and then they put up some apartments. So over the years, it was thought that this should come back to the way it was, and Buffalo has a reputation for doing that. So they actually spent the money to take down the apartment buildings and put the conservatory and pergola back, and it's a stunning complex. I mean, absolutely stunning, and the fact that they were able to do this is just mind-boggling, and it's well worth the trip. We'll have a 2-hour tour of that. We're going to go to Gray Cliff, which was the Martins' summer cottage, basically, also designed by Frank Lloyd Wright, right on Lake Erie. That's about 30 minutes away in Derby. But in the meantime, we're going to see 2 buildings that Wright designed that were never built. And one is the Fontana Boathouse, was designed for the University of Wisconsin, was never built until about 20 or so, 15 years ago. They built it right on the shores of Lake Erie to Frank Lloyd Wright's designs. So we won't be going inside that, it's outside only, and then we'll see the Blue Sky Mausoleum, which was another Wright designed mausoleum in the Forest Lawn Cemetery, which is a gigantic cemetery in Buffalo. And that is a stunning structure. We'll see that from the road, basically.
What is the cost for this, Mike?
Cost is $175. Again, it's July 20th, which is a Saturday. And you know, people who are interested can get a hold of me through the Landmarks office or on the website or Facebook, basically.
Mm-hmm. And you're going to be leaving Utica what time?
It'll be 6:30 in the morning, and we'll probably get back around 8:30, 9 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be a long day, but well worth it.
Yeah. The Buffalo, do they still have their train station?
They do. I was involved with that for a while. It's not in great shape. It's a gigantic structure. They're been looking for reuses for it. I'm told that there will be some announcements shortly, but I've not heard. We went out there a couple of months ago and took a look at it, and it's still standing, but could be in better condition. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens with that.
Is it bigger than Utica's?
Much bigger.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very large building.
The key with these landmark buildings, Mike, is it not to find a use for it? If you can
Yes.
find the use.
And that's the bigger the building, the harder the use. So Union Station, our Union Station was of a size that the county could put offices in there and the DMV and everything else. So they filled it up, basically.
Yeah.
But something like the Buffalo Central Terminal is such a large structure. It's going to take millions and millions of dollars to rehabilitate that, and it's going to be a daunting task.
Isn't the same true of the one in Detroit?
Yes.
Yeah.
And again, Detroit was in worse condition actually than Buffalo because it was wide open. And Ford Motor Company purchased that and has sunk millions of dollars into that, into a state-of-the-art research and development facility, I believe, for electric vehicles. So that just finished, that just opened up very recently. But again, it's going to take some very deep pockets to do something as elaborate and gigantic, basically, as that.
Yeah. And you've got a gala coming up.
Yes, we do. Again, I mentioned that we are 50 years old this year, and on the exact date that we received our charter, which is October 25th, the charter was given to us in 1974, so October 25th of this year, we will celebrate our 50th anniversary at the Stanley Theater. Tickets are not on sale yet, but we do have some opportunities for sponsorships. We have a major sponsor of $5,000, a lead sponsor for $2,500, and table sponsors for $1,250. So if anyone might be interested in being a sponsor, please let Landmarks know.
Mike, is there any buildings that you would list in our area that are, I know that you do an endangered buildings list from time to time. Are there any on that list right now?
Oh, there's quite a few actually. Again, we try to keep our finger on the pulse of the buildings to make sure that, you know, they're not beyond hope and all. And I know one of our major concerns is the former Knights of Columbus building next to, right across from the Munson Art Museum and also right next to the public library. So that had a fire many years ago. Not beyond hope, basically, but the roof needs a lot of attention, and again, we need a reuse for it. So, so that one in particular stands out.
I neglected to ask you when we were talking about the walk and talks throughout the summer. Is there a charge for those?
No, those are free, open to the public. It's rain or shine. So bring an umbrella, bring comfortable shoes, because in some cases there is a considerable amount of walking or stair climbing. So keep that in mind. But no, it's free. We accept donations, of course, but it is totally free and open to the public.
You going to do anything? I know you've done it in the past, walk and talks, up at Forest Hill Cemetery. Not
this year, but we do plan to do something probably next year or the year after.
I mean, a cemetery might not be considered by many people a landmark, but boy, I consider it a landmark.
That certainly is. I mean, it's a who's who of famous figures from the Utica area and all, so it's definitely a very historic cemetery.
And then you got that chapel, what is it, Child's?
Yes.
Child's Chapel?
Yes.
In there that underwent some restoration not that long ago.
Yes, it did.
Yeah. And what is your thoughts on that entrance to the cemetery?
That is, well, that was actually one of our ornaments when we did the ornaments and all that. That's really an iconic and beautiful entrance gateway.
What does it cost to join Landmarks?
$30 a person, or there's several levels of membership and all that, but the basic one is $30.
And you get for that the, what is it, a monthly newsletter?
It's every other month,
Every other, okay.
so 6 times a year. And first dibs at activities and all. We have a lot going on this year.
Mm-hmm. And you put the newsletter together, don't you?
I'm the editor, yes, so blame me.
Okay, and I should have given you proper recognition. Besides being a very active member, you're vice president.
Yes, I am.
Okay, good. Mike, thanks so much for coming in. We always appreciate
Always
it.
a pleasure, Joe. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that's going to do it for us this week. We'll be back next week. We'll do it all again. Don't forget cnyhomepage.com. There's a lot of good stuff there. Until next time, take care of yourself, everybody.